Welcome to the Bible for My Friends. I'm John Swanson. In this series of videos, I'll share with you some of the ways that I approach the Bible. Ways that show up in my writing, my teaching, my conversations with God and with other people. Ways that have made people say, "You help me look at the Bible differently." My family moved from Minnesota to Illinois between my 3rd and 4th grade years. In our new church, in 3rd grade, you learned the names of the books of the Old Testament. In 4th grade, you learned the names of the book of the New Testament. So I learned the New Testament books. But I never clearly learned the order of the last dozen books of the Old Testament. I've developed pretty good coping strategies. I recognize the names of those books. I turn to the appropriate area and page thoughtfully to the right one. Most of them are really short, so if I'm thoughtful enough, I can find the right page without anybody knowing. Until now, of course. And I say that to acknowledge that many people have missed the part of Sunday school where they would have memorized the names of the books. And for us, when people know where to find stuff quickly, it feels like we missed something that everyone else learned, something obvious like tying shoes. So in this episode, look at it as the Sunday school class you missed on where to find stuff in part of the Bible. And you could just use brute memory. I understand that. Make a list and memorize. But that almost never works for mere mortals. And at the other end of a learning spectrum is the table of contents. And I use the table of contents when I can't remember the name, or can't remember the exact order of the minor prophets when I'm studying. But in the middle of a Bible study with a group, that feels really awkward to use the table of contents, right? Sometimes what we need is just really practical guides, just the facts. And that's what I'm looking for in this episode. So let's start really simple. Think anthology. Like in English class, right? There are really big divisions, and then they divide it into sections, and then there are readings within those sections. When you come to the Bible, there are two major sections. One's called Old Testament, and one's called the New Testament. Forget why. They just are. And let me point out that whether or not you understand the labels, whether or not you agree with the labeling or the content of what's in those books, whether or not they should have been called something else, the labels are the labels. And for learning where to find stuff, just learn the labels. So there are two divisions, right? Old Testament, New Testament. And in this episode, we're going to take a look just at the New Testament. There are 4 groupings of readings here. History, letters by Paul, letters by others, and prophecy. And that's it. Now, let's look really closely at those categories. The prophecy one is really easy. There is one reading, one book in the prophecy section, and it's Revelation. It's the last book in the Bible. So when the next apocalyptic movie comes out based on the book of Revelation, just think, yep, the end of the Bible. History is pretty easy to think about, too. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. Now, can I tell you a secret? There are some people who are going to say, wait. There's 2 groups. There's gospel and then there's history. But I'm trying to help you learn the names. So go with me. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. Okay, got it? Okay, we've talked prophecy and history, the beginning of the section and the end of the section. The third section we're going to talk about is letters by Paul. And those are Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. Now, here's a secret. One of the things keeping you from learning these is that you don't know how to pronounce them in your head. You've only read them, but you just heard them. Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon. Now, here's another secret. These letters aren't in order. They aren't in historical order. They aren't in alphabetical order. They aren't in geographical order. So don't worry about making sense of the order. Why is this one before the... They're collected this way. So let's go back to the beginning. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon. And they're called letters by Paul because his name is at the top of each of those letters. And notice that I didn't say 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. Most people just say 1st and 2nd. So, one last time, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon. All right, last section. Letters not from Paul. Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and Jude. Now see, there's only 5 names and then all of the numbers in there. And they're grouped because they are letters and they're not by Paul. In fact, the first of them, Hebrews, no author is identified. So again, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and Jude. Now the last 2 are incredibly short. They're less than a page in some Bibles, 3rd John and Jude. So you can feel great by reading those 2 and saying, I made it through 2 books of the Bible in less than 10 minutes. They're not fun letters, but it lets you do that. All right, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and Jude. So let's review the whole list. Ready? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, Jude, and Revelation. Got it? Marvelous. Thanks for watching this episode of The Bible for My Friends. See more on my channel at youtube.com/JNSwanson and visit me at 300wordsaday.com. See you next time.